Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the next step in recovery, with Dr. Alan Berger and Tom Rutledge. How you doing? You're in the thick of it with the play, right?
Yes, I am. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience.
The sunroof gives you sort of a halo-like appearance. It seems
really?
sort of spiritual. Yeah, it's like
Illusion's a wonderful thing, you know.
It's all we got.
I want to kind of save the best stuff till Alan gets here, but congratulations on getting that off the ground. Like, I know you've been working on it for a while.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Yeah, it's been a real process. David had so much to do with it.
Really?
I brought my pages to David early on, and I remember sitting with him at down in the marina on the water. We were sitting at a picnic table, and I could hardly get through it. I was weeping. I couldn't get through reading it to him, you know. Mm-hmm. And he just looked across at the table at me, and he said, "That's the shit, Michael. That's the shit," you know. Yeah, David is a dear friend, and I love him dearly. He has a lot to do with my creative life, you know. He always has. I started, I got work from him, you know, early on. NYPD Blue, I was teaching acting in New York, you know. And he called me and invited me to be on the show. And I remember I went into an interview with Alexa Vogel, who's a casting director. And I was working on my character, Mike Roberts, for, you know, a good while, about 3 or 4 days. And I walk in character in this suit as this New York City detective, right? And I'm led to a room of, I think it was 12 or 13 10-year-olds waiting to be seen for an audition. And now I look back on it and I say, well, I was in the right place, you know. But Alexa called me, and she called me down the hall, and she had the camera set up. And I don't know. I still think to this day, David's just working on another plane, you know. He's always the smartest guy in the room, you know, and just a dear friend.
I have actually not seen any of NYPD Blue, and so I'm excited to go back and to see your character and everything. Were you on a few episodes?
I did 2 or 3 a year, I think. I think I did 13 episodes or something. But I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. I was working with David Caruso the first year. And he was interviewing me. You know, it was a criminal interview. I was a bad cop. Anyway, they set the camera up. Felix Alcala, who was a great director, he said, look, I'm going to set the camera up and just go ahead and do what you're going to do, you know. And that was music to my ears, you know, coming from the theater, you know. So I went ahead and we did this scene, and it went great. And and then at the very end, I decide I punched my fist through the window. I look over at Dennis Franz, and he's not really looking very happy. And I said, did I do something wrong? You know, I was so green and young and dumb, you know. And he said, well, you may want to tell the guys next time you want to put your fist through a window, you know. He ended it by saying he wasn't going to do any rooftop scenes with me, you know. So.
A wise choice.
I would consider that a compliment. By the way, it's like I would log that in as a compliment. An actor willing to go to the links, you know. It's like, well, I think my character would fling himself off the roof.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Michael.
Hello, Alan. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
We met once before, I think, over at my house when my daughter had a birthday party.
Oh, and the puppet thing.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, that's right, man. Hey, good to see you.
See
Good to
you.
see you. Yeah, I was there with my son, and he's still puppeteering, you know.
Oh, that's great, man. That's
He's working
great.
with someone from the Henson Company. He's been working with her for, she's
One.
6 years, I think. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. He's found his niche, huh? He's
Yeah,
found
that's right. That's right.
cutting those strings is what emotional sobriety is, isn't it? It's about somehow finding a way to achieve that autonomy in our lives, that emotional autonomy. And it's quite a journey. It's quite a journey as we've been experiencing now since we've been doing these podcasts and these workshops on Thursday nights. What's your experience with that in your recovery, Michael? How have you experienced that emotional dependency and how have you addressed it?
I think for many of us in recovery, it's a very painful process because we oftentimes grow up in places and environments where we're not supported emotionally. So we tend to replicate that experience unconsciously for the most part for me and many of us. And, you know, I find it gets complicated. If, you know, I was going to be a Jesuit years ago, I really wanted to do that. And I didn't do it. They rejected me, actually, when I told them about my youth.
What was it about your youth that they rejected? That's curious to me.
Oh, just my past wanderings, and you know, I had lived 50 years in my first 20, so they weren't too keen on me coming in. But you know, my spiritual director at the time was Father Walter Chiswick, who's up for canonization right now. And when I went up to Fordham to see him, we were doing the spiritual exercise of St. Ignatius, you know, and he looked at me and he said, "What'd they say to you?" I said, "Well, they said, with your background, we'd never be able to let you in." And he laughed so hard, his head kicked back over the back of his chair, and he said, "If you want to get in, I'll get you in." And so I went, because we were having authentic experiences, you know, with the Lord together. It was very meaningful to me. So anyway, my point was that that's still the center of my life. So, and a lot about what my play is about is that I don't throw people away. We have a tendency in our culture to throw people away, to judge people, not really be compassionate. Matter of fact, we were talking about David Milch, and I was at lunch with him one day, and I said, I was really hurt. I was in a relationship, and this woman I was with, I just had a very difficult time dealing with what she was saying to me. What she was saying to me was largely historical, you know. It didn't have a lot to do with me. And I said, "What do you do when people are just mean-spirited to you?" And he took a beat, and he looked down, and then he looked at me, and he said, "Well, with a quiet heart, I just try to realize that they have some real reason why they're functioning that way." And I never forgot that. It was such a simple explanation. So again, my point in mentioning this is to say that oftentimes that's been the impetus for me to hang on to relationships and to continue to work on them, even though they may be toxic for me, because I don't want to throw that person away. I don't want to leave them. And then it's obviously complicated by my own needs and my desires and the reenactment of addictive cycles that I learned very early on in my life.
But you're also describing a very practical part of compassion. It's like, it's not like I'm just, oh my God, I have this big heart and all. So you're saying, like just a second ago, before you said what you said, I wrote down the sentence, whatever crazy you are, you come by it honestly.
That example you just gave is so powerful because it really gets to the heart of the matter in terms of how often we take things personally.
Yep.
And that's the challenge, is to be able to see the other person and who they are rather than personalize it.
It is personal, though, the illusion of separateness, right? That we're all one part of one body. So in that respect, it is personal.
Yeah, well, you said it very well before. You said, I knew what she was doing was historical. It really didn't have anything to me, even though it was directed to me.
Right.
Right. Well, what I often say in that situation, Michael, it would be better if it became personal, because the way Dr. Kempler told me, my mentor, he said, to be more personal in a relationship, you have to stop taking things personally. You have to realize that other person is doing what they're doing because of who they are, not because of you, even though it's directed to you. And I'll tell you, it took a long time, and I still struggle with that at times. But when I'm able to apply that concept, it gives me that freedom of being able to stay present with someone and have compassion for them rather than getting reactive, defensive, attacking back. You hit me, I want to hit you, kind of a thing. Deal. And it was such a brilliant observation he made. If you want to be more personal, stop taking it personally.
I believe in that. As my comment, says, but I'm in agreement. I also think I have to be authentic in my own experience, and be vulnerably receptive and responsive to what is happening in the moment, whether I'm in a romantic relationship or I'm in a friendship or it's a family relationship. I have to be authentic in where I'm at, and that includes embracing my limitations as a person, and being willing to own those limitations, and
well said.
Yeah, so
that's a good point, because that's because those relationships are mirrors, as they say, and it's that's where we learn about our limitations is by paying attention to people in relationships.
Sure.
What you said, Michael, about the reluctance to throw people away, I just thought I'd briefly throw it in there. I have a sponsee that has been struggling with different life things for a while, and some in our fellowship have reached out to me, and they've said, I had to step away because I worry that my presence in his life is some form of enabling of whatever, his self-destructive behaviors have been. Maybe there's a utility in stepping away, but I think that I'm always hoping that my continued presence as he struggles can help him to kind of find his way towards better.
You bring up, though, an interesting point, is in terms of if we experience our limitation in a relationship, and I just can't go any further. And that's what you were bringing up at that point, is we don't want to override ourselves either and erase ourselves. So it's interesting. I was doing this workshop with Zoe Williams, and he was talking about sticking to dismount when you leave a relationship. What does it look like dismounting the relationship, and how to stick that landing, right?
I can say I've never done it.
Well, it brings up an interesting point, because we can leave a relationship and do a lot of damage in how we leave. And if I leave a relationship and I own, this is my limitation, this has nothing to do with you're who you are, and that's who you are. I'm unable to stay connected now because I can't find a way to feel good about being with you and keep it on ourselves. I saw that a lot in treatment programs, Michael, is when a patient would relapse, they would blame the patient.
Blame the patient.
Yeah. You don't want to get well. That's why we can't help you. And the truth of it is the way I, train therapists now is to say, look, I don't know how to reach you. I can see you're still struggling and need help, but I don't know how to reach you at this point in time. Instead of making them feel worse about themselves and better about themselves is to own it. So I thought that point about being authentic is very important, because we're not saying with this idea of being able to hold on to yourself that you have to stay in a relationship if you can't. If it's beyond your possibilities at this point, that's okay. That's accepting who we are too. And that's the other
level, yeah.
That's a very, very nuanced point, and it's a very important point. The other thing I was thinking about is when we say don't take it personally, it's not a bypass to deal with our feelings, meaning that, if it means something to us, we need to look at that. As Bill said, every time we're disturbed, there's something going on with us. Not
Absolutely.
With we need to apply some curiosity and start to, examine and unpack, hey, what's going on here for me? But you're doing that. I can see that you've done a lot of work. You've done a lot of spiritual work in your life. When did you start that spiritual journey?
Even before I got sober, I did a Christian awakening in St. Paul's in Brooklyn on Humboldt Street when I was 17, and I really felt that I was raised in a Catholic tradition, so that's where I'll speak from. But I had an authentic experience with Jesus, and then I kept drinking and drugging. That didn't stop me. I'd be tripping my brains out at a bar and having a case of stout in my gut, and I'd be talking about the Lord, I was just really insane, but it wasn't that. I've done 40 years of therapy too, and I've had tremendous, my therapist, who's passed now, was deep, probably the most influential person in my life. She was really one of a kind. She would be available to me. If I called her, she would call me back. She didn't have, and it wasn't a question of a lack of boundaries.
Well, it was how she worked.
She created a safe space for me so that I was able to understand that I had true support. And from that experience, that practical experience of, in reality, of what we call reality, whatever the hell that is has been the basis of my independence, along with, the foremost reason being my faith,
I want to make sure that we can talk about your journey towards creativity. Were you writing and were you acting before you got sober? And what was your movement towards being like a fully creative spirit, in the trajectory of your life?
Well, I was so drunk. I registered for the wrong college. I was going to be a social worker, and I wound up in the wrong university. So I was in all of these classes that were theory, and I had been working hands-on with groups. I was working with the Fortune Society, prison reform. I was working with civil rights groups. We were working on getting men released who had rehabilitated themselves over many years, things like that. And then I went into this university setting where I was doing book learning. I was a mess. I remember my social statistics teacher called me in and said, "You've been here maybe 5 times this semester, you know." And I was in a fraternity. We had the lowest grade point average of any group on campus. We were, it was really just a mess. And anyway, so I loved acting. My father was an impersonator in the war. He used to do shows for the Navy, and he did everybody. He would do Olivier and Cagney and Bogart.
Wow.
Ronald Coleman, he would do them all. Clark Gable, the list goes on and on. Anyway, so I said, well, you know what? I'm going to sign up for an acting class as an elective because it was something that I did a play in high school, And I wound up studying with a guy from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art who was upstate New York, in his retirement years. And he became my mentor. His name was John Barrett. And he was actually a physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project. And he was part of a group that designed the device, the detonation device for the bomb. And they never told him what he was doing.
Yeah.
And when he realized what he was doing, what he did, he had a complete breakdown and wound up going into art and ran theater and dance companies throughout Europe. It was brilliant, really brilliant. He returned me on to the Alpha State. He was really a brilliant guy. Anyway, I did 7 shows back to back up there at Geneseo State University. But I was also, I kept it together to do my shows, but as soon as we opened, I'd go on a 2 or 3 day bender,
That was the case, but no longer, right? Did you have to reinvent I imagine, because I've had to, with my writing, reinvent your entire conception of creation, right? Post-sobriety.
I was more in love with the self is probably the most appropriate way to put it. But I was more in love with the superficial idea of a roustabout actor, Peter O'Toole and, Burton. I was very heavily influenced by the British actors when I was a young guy,
I think Peter O'Toole got sober, right? Didn't he?
I don't know. I think he did. I know he really paid the price physically for it. But there was a great story John Hurt told many years ago that I read about. And he was talking about, I think it was Burton who was playing Othello, and somebody was talking about brilliant actors. And he said, "You want to know about brilliant acting?" He said, Burton, when he would play Othello, he had this one section of the play where he'd have about 8 minutes, and he'd walk off the stage, he'd walk back through the backstage area, through the green room, down the fire escape, through the alley, across the street, and the barkeep would have a setup for him of 2 shots. And he, in full regalia, in Othello regalia, he'd down 2 shots, and then he'd turn around and he'd walk back across the street, through the alley, up the fire escape, through the green room, and without stopping, he would go right back onto the middle of the stage and deliver his speech. He said, "Now that is great acting."
That's amazing.
It's athletic.
What I thought was that's all part of the play. The audience just doesn't get to see that part. It's like it certainly happens every single time. It's perfect.
Herb K, who we've had on the show a few times, talks about the importance of having a practice, a spiritual practice, whether you're praying, you're meditating, obviously, your step 11, you're doing that consistently. And, I had the privilege of sitting down with you briefly to talk about writing maybe a year or two ago, Michael. And, you were adamant, and I know Milch is adamant about doing it every day, doing it consistently, not thinking about it before you do it. I'm speaking to writing, I guess, now. Emotional sobriety comes into play, I think, vitally. Freedom of the ego, letting the voice from wherever come to you. And that takes work. It's very hard for me to disengage my egoic impulse.
Yeah, I'd like to say all my false pride has been kicked out of me a long time ago. I have a specific situation. I have a son with a triple disability. So my life is really about love, service, and sacrifice. And I can't write every day. That would be a blessing. That would be a privilege for me to be able to write every day. I'm not able to do that with my circumstances. But what I am able to do is surrender my egoic state, as you just put it, and follow the breadcrumbs home, which in my situation is to be of love and service to my son, and which has really diminished my self, my so-called self. Although if you spoke with Ramana Maharshi or Papaji or any of the great Yogananda or any of those guys, they would say there is no self, and I think any great mystic would probably say the same thing, and I don't understand that. I don't understand it, but it rings true to me. But to propose an understanding of it would be pure folly for me. So I'd love to write every day, but I don't have that ability. But when I do get the windows to write, it's primarily been my friendship with David that has opened the door to give me the confidence to do that, because he believed in me. And he told me that I could do it, and he told me that what I had to say is valuable. I continue to do it. It makes my life better. It just purely, Bukowski said that. He said, I just write to make my life manageable. And so in some ways that's true for me too, in a minuscule way from him.
Of all the things you may get in training, this or that, or social work or psychology or whatever you're going to do, it's like there may be some things that other people need to hear more, but it's like there's no more powerful message than that. And if you're getting it from somebody who you've let close, see, anybody can say that, but if somebody is close enough to you that you trust that they know you, and then they say they believe in you, it really creates a little bit of a problem inside of us because we believe them, and not very often we don't feel the same way about ourselves, but that bolsters you. Because when you said that, I thought, sometimes, no matter what I can do with somebody in therapy, just to be able to say genuinely, I believe in you, and I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen, but I believe in you. It's like, I think you make a world of difference, and that's a great example of that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much a lone wolf. I've come to peace. I'm at peace with that these days. But there are several people that I let in. And I'm still in touch with old timers. I talk regularly on the phone. I do online meetings with my son sometimes, and I certainly have a spiritual director. I've always had a Jesuit spiritual director my whole sobriety, and I'm in therapy.
Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of doing the play, and has that been a real test of, I don't know, your emotional sobriety?
Everything is a test, you know. Everything is a test.
Oh, shit.
It's all a test. Spirits living in a material world, right? You know, as a writer, David taught me to get out of the way. As a matter of fact, I wrote my play. I had David's assistant typing for me, Brittany, who just did a beautiful job for me. And I found that by having somebody do the typing, I was able to just let it go. And I was able to establish the rhythms of dialogue for each character, not by trying to do so, but by allowing them to speak through me. You know, August Wilson used to say that if you don't know something, if you're stuck, ask the character that knows everything, and they'll tell you what's going on. And
You wrote it through dictation.
yes, that's right. Yeah,
Fantastic.
So I was able to embody the character that I was writing. You know, the characters that I was writing, and that was very powerful for me. And so what I did was I started in April. We started working, and I studied acting with Bill Esper, you know, in New York many years ago. And he was really, I don't think there was anybody that was much better than him. And I also worked with Phil Gushy, and I can say the same of him. They both sat at Sandy Meisner's side for many, many years, and then taught with him, you know. And but what I learned there was the freedom that to allow the dialogue to come through me after dropping in the circumstance, the relationship, the specific objectives, and then letting it all go and just showing up and being authentic in the moment. And I learned that same thing with David. As a writer, I learned how to let it all go and allow it to come through. That's one of the interesting things as a writer that I learned from David, is that it's always there, that the reservoir is always filled.
Yeah.
It's never not filled. It's always filled up. And we, in our egoic state, Patrick, as you mentioned before, we think that it's not. You know, we think that it's limited because we're looking at it through those glasses, you know. But if we just show up at the page, not to say I don't have a day or many days where I'm not able to get much accomplished, but I've learned again through David that those days are just as important as the days where I can get 7 pages out. They're equally valuable. So in tracking back to your question about the play, it's just been very, it's been like fusion jazz, you know, like Larry Coryell, you know. It's just, it's been like working and really paying attention. All the actors in the show are from the Actors Studio, so they're really well versed in the work. And it was really about just staying the hell out of the way and letting them go and letting them, you know, find moments. And I just continually invited them to find it, you know, and they would get frustrated sometimes with me because they would say, well, what do I do here? I don't know what I'm doing. I said, well, find it, you know. And and sometimes they didn't like that, you know. Sometimes they want me to get in there and do it, and then at times I did, you know. But it's if you can really get out of the way directorially, you'll find that the roles that the people are playing are theirs, that you've handed them the work, and they're living it through with their soul. And that's what you want. You don't want somebody running around doing what you think is right. You know, living the rhythms and living the meaning of a role, and telling the story is all very, very important. But you want to be able to give everybody a collaborative spirit. Otherwise, you're basically being a dictator in a field that's free, and that is that's just a defeating premise from the very.
Well, you're facilitating creativity at every level of that. What you're saying, because I mean, there are two things you're saying over and over again in different ways: show up and let go. Show up and allow this to happen. It's like, and I'm pretty sure that I can speak for I know for at least Allen, maybe Patrick, but just the idea that, because we've talked about this before, just the idea of when we get in troubles, when we get in our own way, you know, our little conscious minds really overvalues itself. It thinks it has plenty to contribute about everything, and it's like, you know, it's helpful sometimes, but mainly we need to get out of the way. And you express that beautifully. And when Patrick's asking you about the creativity, I mean, everything about what you're doing, it's not just the writing, it's not just the performing, it's everything about it is the process of creativity. It's beautiful.
That's it, man. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember in Brooklyn years ago, I got sober in Brooklyn, right near where Bill Wilson went to meetings. And so I knew guys that knew him and were in that group of guys that formed the program. They knew them, and the tradition was handed down, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my friend Charlie McGee, God bless him, he was sober about 25 years at that point. I have 44 years now. And in those days, I thought, how the hell can anybody get 25 years of sobriety? Because I was a year sober, you know, and still trying to put two and two together, you know. And anyway, I asked Charlie, would you be my sponsor? And he said, I'll be your friend. I said, what's the matter? You don't want to be my sponsor? And he said, no. He said, we didn't make such a big deal out of that years ago. We were really just friends, and we helped each other. And if somebody needed a job, we helped them get a job. If they wanted to meet a girl, we tried to introduce them to a girl. You know, it was like that, you know.
Yeah.
And, but he said something to me that I never forgot. He said, you know, Mike, if you look at your life, because I was really working the program. I mean, I went to meetings every day. I did a lot of service. And he said, if you look at your life, you'll find that you're living the steps every day.
Yeah. And,
you know, I looked at my life, and he was right. That I didn't even realize it. You know, I didn't even realize it. So those guys had a way of making you feel confident, again, by an authentic expression of observation of the truth.
The other thing that came to mind when you were talking about, you know, how you were as a director, it's like a director is a good therapist. Helping people find themselves, right? And find their voice and find what it means to them to play that role.
Embody the imperfections, you know, and not try to tie it up and get it going in a specific direction. But
show up, let it go. Show up, let it go. It's beautiful.
That's it. Yeah.